Today I'd like to show you how to make steelhead on the grill that seems like steelhead on a smoker. And it's a lot quicker and you don't have to have a smoker. So right here I've got a steelhead fillet that is fresh. I just caught it yesterday. Got it in a Ziploc bag. I personally like these freezer style bags. It doesn't matter if you buy a main brand or not, but the freezer ones are a little heavier duty and they got the double zip so you won't make as big of a mess if there's a little hole in one of the seals. So first thing you got to do is make yourself a drink because you're cooking. You can always cook better if you had a drink. So I'm gonna make myself a Manhattan. I'm using my Uncle Nearest here. It's not a bourbon, but it's good as a bourbon. Splash of bitters. And my favorite vermouth, Lestau. You can see I measure very carefully. I cook the same way. All right, now I'm ready. Using my bartender stir stick. All right, okay, so this is really simple. You probably have most of these ingredients. A couple of them you'll have to go out and get. Most predominant ingredient I have is just some dark brown sugar. You're gonna need about a cup of that. Use my Manhattan preciseness. So whatever you like really is what I'm saying. Put that in there. You're gonna need about half a jar of this grandma's molasses. Actually, any brand of molasses will work, but about a half jar of that. A half jar is good because then you know you get 2 fish out of 1 jar. Soy sauce, you're gonna need about a 1/4 cup. You can use more. You know, salt brings out the taste of the sweet. So you just saw me put a whole lot of sugar in there, but somehow a little bit of salt makes that sugar just the kind of savory that you really like. So I'm gonna dump about a 1/4 cup of soy sauce in there. If you don't like that, you can use about any kind of salty liquid fish sauce. Works really good instead of soy sauce. Tamari is a good choice. You're gonna need some liquid smoke. I don't have a precise measure on the liquid smoke. I like it to taste pretty smoky, so I don't know that much. Whatever that is. And then here's a secret ingredient. So right now we've achieved base recipe. With those simple ingredients, the brown sugar, the molasses, the smoke, and the soy sauce, you've got everything you need to make this taste like it's smoked on the grill. I personally like to go an extra notch and use either the Zatarain's or this Louisiana brand on the liquid crab boil. I just like what it brings. It brings it some spiciness and some savoriness. It brings out the sage and hot pepper taste, and I don't know, I just really like what it brings, so I put that in there too. But it's certainly not needed. Then, all this stuff has to get mixed up. None of this was hot, so the brown sugar has to melt in to the other liquid ingredients. A little bit of mixing up will make that happen. You'd be surprised. I think brown sugar melts better than like white sugar. If you mix white sugar into liquid, you get annoyed. It's always clumping up. Brown sugar doesn't do that. Maybe because it's already kind of molasses soaked. I don't know. So a couple tricks right here. You don't want much air because we're gonna store this in the refrigerator overnight before we stick it on the grill. So we don't want air because an air pocket will mean here's a piece that doesn't get a lot of flavoring on it, whereas down here it's soaking in the juice, up here it's not. We also don't want a lot of folds. This fillet happens to be a pretty long one because, good grief, the fish are big this year. If you haven't been out, get out. So it's a fairly long fillet, so I'm kind of laying it out a little bit in there, trying to make sure it's, but I also want to get no air. I'm making a mess here, you can see this. Just sort of squeeze the air out of it as best you can. And you get it laid down on the table. Get that last little bit of air out of there. And then run your seal. It's nice and messy right here. But you can see I got almost no air in there. Now that I got it sealed, I'm gonna rinse this off so my wife doesn't yell at me for sticking this sloppy mess in the fridge. Okay, and there we go, we're ready for the fridge. So, again, when you put it in the fridge, you want to spread it out, make sure that It's got stuff on all sides, and then maybe in a couple hours or 4 hours, come in the fridge and flip it over, and you'll see, like, okay, yeah, that's working. Just common sense will tell you what to do next. Just check on it here and there and make sure it looks good. And tomorrow, we're gonna put this on the grill, and I'll show you the best way to do that too. All right, it's Thanksgiving morning. We're noon, and it's time for a Negroni. Everybody drinks Negronis on Thanksgiving, don't they? At least I do. So, all right, it's also time to prep this steelhead for the grill. So it's soaked overnight in the Ziploc bag with the stuff that I showed you, and you can see it's taken on a different appearance. It already looks like it came out of the smoker. So what I've done is just rinsed it off with water so that all the goodness is stuck in there that we need there. We don't need to roast a bunch of sugar to it. Although you can do that. You don't have to rinse it off. You can just slop it onto your whatever you're going to cook it on, if you're using a pizza screen or a cedar plank, whatever you're using. But I like to do this step. So rinse it off, I put it on this tray, and I'm going to pull out the pin bones. So once it's been soaking, the flesh kind of changes a little bit, and these pin bones stick out really obviously. See them? They run from the very front of the fillet, where there's going to be a couple that have been cut off and they're stubby. You got to get those. And then they stop right back here, about where the fin is. They just stop, and there's no more after that. So you got to pull them all out. Not too challenging. You can see them, you can feel them, and all you do is grab them with a little pair of pliers, kind of pull them out like that. You work your way all the way down the fish. You can see I'm holding the fish back when I pull them out, because if you don't, you can kind of tear the fish, and you want to pull on the angle they are. You can see the layers of the meat, jump, 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 right? And these things sort of go in, they follow those layers, and they go in on a curve this way. So you want to pull in that direction. If you pull the wrong direction, you're just going to tear up the meat. So that, you just work our way all the way down. Shouldn't take too long. And again, you can feel them down here in the front where you can't see the little half pieces that get cut off when you took the fillet out. So you got to do a little extra work to get it. You can feel right where it's at, and then get in there. Oh, I'm struggling to grab it. Oh. See, them little tiny ones are a little tougher to get. All right, so I'm going to work my all the way down. Somehow, when you leave them in there while it's soaking in the stuff, in the marinade, it helps these bones rise to the surface. I think maybe some of the water comes out of the fillet, and so the fillet shrinks back a little. And that makes it so it's just a lot easier to see what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to pull the rest of these bones out of here, and then I'm going to leave this sit on this tray to drain. Anything you can put it on where it has to be able to be dry on the bottom, you let it sit for at least an hour. And so what that does is it causes it to dry a little bit on the outside and form what they call a pellicle. What that means is just basically a dry skin coat. So the sugar and the other things that were in that mix just sort of form this hard crust on it. And what that does is when you put it on the grill, that helps seal in the moisture into the meat because it has a skin on it already before it hits the grill. That's a really good step to make sure you have a super moist steelhead when you're done. Okay, get your grill to about 350 degrees. And then after you have a good pellicle, you can see it's got kind of a glazy kind of a look. It's not really dry, just tacky, kind of sticky. So I'll put this on a cedar plank. I soaked it in water while I was developing the pellicle on the fillet, so it's nice. That gives it a little bit of steam effect. You can also do this on like a pizza screen or something like that, but I like the cedar plank because it protects one side of it and lets some of that steam rise up through the wood into the meat. It gives it a little bit of a cedar taste, but mostly I like the fact that you're not cooking it so much on all sides, because a steelhead is a lot like a tuna steak. It goes from great to terrible and dry in like 1 second overcooking. So what we're doing is putting it in here on the 350 on the grill. Keep an eye on it for about 20 minutes at the most. What you're really looking for is some of the fat bubbling up out. So there'll be some seams along here, and you'll see some white fat bubbling out. When that happens, you are very done. So it's time to get it off of there. Then you just let it sit for 5 minutes. It'll finish cooking. So let's give this a little bit, and we'll check on it again soon. All right, it's been about 20 minutes. You can see I got lots of juice bubbling around the edges and not a lot of fat on this one. That's partly because I cut the fat off when I put the filet in there. So fats are where all the toxins are, so I try not to get any of it if I can avoid it. But I just have, from doing this a lot, I just have a feeling that's the right amount of cook. So I'm just gonna put it on this plank, and if you see, it was a thin cedar plank, so some of it burned away in the flames. But you can tell by looking in there, that's ready to go. And there it is. That's how you do steelhead on your grill that tastes like smoked steelhead. Give it a try.